Good evening and a very warm welcome to Rwanda Television News with me, Gloria Mutesi. Starting us off tonight, the genocide suspect Beatrice Munyenyezi has been deported from the U.S. back to Rwanda. She is suspected of committing atrocities in what used to be Butare Prefecture, now Huye District, in the southern province back in 1994 during the genocide that was perpetrated against the Tutsi here in Rwanda. In 2013, she was sentenced to 10 years in a U.S. prison for lying to that country about her role in the genocide against the Tutsi. She did this while applying for American citizenship. In 2017, her appeal was rejected and the U.S. investigators visited Rwanda to speak to witnesses about the crimes she is suspected of that include murdering people during the genocide against the Tutsi. Earlier, we spoke to the spokesperson of the Rwanda Investigation Bureau shortly after the suspect arrived at the Kigali International Airport.
The suspect, Munyenyezi Beatrice, we received tonight. She is deported from U.S. after serving the sentence of 10 years due to fraudulent obtaining U.S. citizenship by misrepresenting material fact to U.S. immigration authorities. She has concealed her involvement in genocide against the Tutsi in 1994. In 2003, she secured U.S. citizenship, which was later on in 2013 revoked after discovering that she lied to the immigration office. Her deportation means a lot in terms of justice delivery to the victim of a genocide against the Tutsi. Because our case file were already in place, she is suspected to have committed 7 offenses: murder as a genocide crime, conspiracy to commit genocide, planning of the genocide, incitement to commit genocide, complicity in genocide, extermination, complicity in rape. All these charges are supported by various acts wherein, in various occasions, she was seen on roadblock participating in checking ID to identify Tutsi to be killed. On 25th April 1994, at the roadblock mounted at Ihuriro Hotel, she could identify Tutsis and handed them over to Interahamwe for rape. Herself got involved in the shooting with a pistol of a Catholic nun after handing her over to Interahamwe for rape. Now, she's detained at Remera Rib Station.
Now, from the just concluded East African Procurement Forum that was held here in Kigali, Mr. John Karani is the chairman of the Council of the Kenya Institute of Supplies Management and a procurement and supply chain practitioner. And he joins me in studio now to talk a bit about the conference. Karibuni sana, John.
Asante sana.
Well, how was the conference and what were the key aspects shared throughout this 2-day forum?
Well, thank you very much, Gloria, for having me here. It's a real privilege to be on Rwanda television station to talk about a topic that is very relevant right now in our day and time, because COVID has actually thrust procurement and supply chain into the epicenter of action, where procurement people have been called to become more responsive, more agile, more collaborative, more adaptive, to respond to this emergency situation, because everything revolves around supply chain. And that's really been the gist of how can we now better respond to these emerging emergencies, if there's such a word, but it's clearly going to be a new normal as we have had. How can we be better prepared in future to become more responsive so that we are not caught flat-footed in future pandemics that may happen, because this could just be the beginning. And how can we prepare the mechanisms, the proper infrastructure, the proper platforms to become more responsive to our customers, to our users, to the government especially. So the theme really has been really around 3 key parameters: strengthening integrity and accountability in public procurement for an effective emergency response. So in that theme alone, there's so many aspects of it that tells you there's what they need to strengthen our response mechanism. There's a need to integrate what we call integrity, to actually engender integrity and accountability in public procurement, and make sure that we are more able to respond to the emergencies that will come in future, such as COVID-2019.
Absolutely. And throughout the years, there's been like a negative narrative around procurement and supply chains in Africa and even globally. Moving forward, what needs to be done for you to change this narrative as procurement professionals?
That's a very deep question, because it's something that has, I want to call it the negative narrative that has bedeviled the procurement and supply chain profession for the longest time. And much as it is true that there will always be one or two rotten apples in any profession, not just procurement, it is not true at all to say that procurement professionals are thieves. It is it's an unfortunate historical injustice, I call it, that we as procurement people have inherited, and which is something we need to do to change that perception. It will take time, but it will take also one professional at a time. And it's going to take each regional chapter, each country, doing the necessary sensitization, in entrenching the right culture of transparency, of accountability. And I want to say this because procurement is never a single person function. It's not just done by procurement professionals. It's a multifaceted role. It's done by users who may be engineers or maybe accountants. It's done by the people who actually generate the need. We as procurement people are really a piece of the cog, a facilitator in a wheel that's got many players. And unfortunately, we always end up bearing the brunt of the blame when things go wrong. When the truth is, there are so many players, right from the accounting officer that actually sign off the final order, to the people that actually sit in the tender committee, some of whom may not be procurement people. So I want to say this to say that we're not shifting the blame, but we want to make sure that everybody takes responsibility of the role they play in the supply chain wheel, so that we are not victimized, our members are not victimized and branded criminals even long before they are had. And that's something we are trying to do, especially within our own sphere of influence in Kenya, and I know it's happening across East Africa. How can we ensure that accountability, there's clear transparency of the process so that everybody is held accountable for the role they play in the supply chain wheel,
Certainly.
so that we are not victimized wrongly as professionals?
Certainly a long way to go, but would you say that procurement laws across the regional policies are favorable, and what needs to be done better to improve service delivery?
Actually, right, I must say the laws that we have had so far have been good, but as always, the dynamism needed to be built into our laws, and I think that is also true, because laws should not be permanent fixtures. We should be constantly evolving them in line with the times that we are living in. And one of those laws that has been a little bit unfriendly to supply chain people is actually response to emergency procurement. It is like we never factored in that there will be emergencies. So the days, the lead times that were put into place to process orders were very lengthy, so that when COVID came, we were caught unawares because we did not have very clear-cut structures on how do we respond to an emergency situation without breaking the protocols, without being competitive, without keeping in place the clear principles of procurement, transparency, accountability, competitiveness, integrity. And that's how it happened that people took advantage of that gap to do orders almost retrospectively, which without bearing in mind the principles that underpin every procurement decision. And those are the things now that COVID has taught us. We need to put in place the proper mechanism to respond to future emergency situations.
John, very briefly before I let you go, what can East African countries learn from each other moving forward in terms of procurement?
So there's an absolute need for us, I keep saying this for the longest time, as East Africa, we've got such a rich base in terms of productivity. And I come from the School of Economics, where we say economics of comparative advantage. What can each country capitalize on? So you become the center of excellence. For instance, Rwanda can become the center of excellence for systems. other countries can become the manufacturing hub. How can we leverage the collective scale, the collective genius of our region, so that we actually create local industries, so that we are not caught flat-footed by dependency on China? We have the raw materials, we have the skill power, or we just need to invest in the capital equipment to become our own local production centers, and therefore eventually cut off the dependency syndrome that has unfortunately bedeviled us for too many years. We in East Africa, we as supply chain professionals can drive that agenda to become a self-dependent economics in this region. And that's what we should take forward.
Yeah, Mr. John Karani, thank you so much for sparing a moment of your time to speak to us this evening.
Thank you very much, Gloria. It's been a real pleasure to be here. Asante sana.
Asante. Well, moving on, heritage experts say that they are ready to make the most of the planned Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Rwanda that will bring together visitors from various countries, which they say will be a chance to forge cultural tourism partnerships. Umwiza Deborah was born in July 1994, just as the RPF in Inkotanyi captured Kigali and stopped the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. We found her at the Campaign Against Genocide Museum, where she had come to visit. She finds that visiting such places is a very important thing to do. I always encourage my friends to come and visit, even the foreigners, because the message you find in the museum is something you'd wish for everyone in the world to know. Kamasoni Alice from the Rwanda Culture Heritage Academy and Medad Vashana from the Campaign Against Genocide Museum are optimistic about the CHOGM meetings. We came up with an association that will enable them to visit various places, be it in Kigali or other provinces. This comprises of various activities that they will indulge in where every cell has its originality, and we believe they will leave this place after learning about our history. The COVID-19 pandemic affected these heritage sites, with the number of visitors dropping because of the COVID-19 restrictions. Kamasoni Alice from the Rwanda Cultural Heritage Academy says that they are using technology to help them in times when measures are being still observed. There are concerts we used to hold for people to learn about the history in our country, so we are working on seeing how we can hold these concerts and visits virtually as we are still facing the pandemic. Prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, the number of visitors to these heritage sites ranged from 200,000 to 270,000. This has dropped to about 72,000 annually. The revenue from these sites ranged from between 260 and 310 million annually before the COVID-19 pandemic, and this has dropped to 71 million during the pandemic. Agriculture experts here in Rwanda are calling for better policies to ensure that agriculture produce reaches markets effectively, helping farmers to develop faster. As Serge Nore explains, ideas that are being collected will be presented at the UN in September, when the heads of state and government from around the world meet to discuss eradicating global hunger.
Farmers across the country say it is not uncommon for their produce to be turned away from processing plants over quality issues, or the fact that getting markets for their harvest can also be difficult, greatly discouraging them. It takes a lot to farm and harvest, including hiring people to help us when necessary, and we must pay them. Then when it comes time to sell the rice, problems arise in the markets. Problem is this: why is Pakistani rice still being imported when our rice here in Bugarama is not being sold anywhere but in Rusizi district? To answer such questions and address issues affecting not just Rwandan but African farmers in general, a meeting was organized bringing together different stakeholders. The nature of our policies, be it in the agricultural, trade and food industries, have gaps that allow outsiders to come in and exploit them for profit. That is a serious problem. Also, we tend to use things like planting seeds and other tools to use for agricultural practices that we import from abroad because they speed up an increase in productivity instead of finding ways to improve our own produce and send out to markets. There is also a problem of institutions not properly coordinating to ensure that challenges encountered in the agricultural sector are overcome in the most efficient way.
There are different policies for cultivation, the use of things like fertilizers, harvesting, and the way produce is sold in markets. Then there are land and environment policies. So the question is, how do they complement each other? Also, when new policies are introduced, the gaps in the existing ones should be examined so that they may be addressed. Things like trade policies must also be considered when it is time to sell the produce or livestock and how such things get to the end user.
Lawmakers that participated in the discussions say they are working to address such matters.
Farmers produce things people will put in their bodies, so there can be no compromise on the quality of what they put in the markets. And even when there, that produce must be kept clean, which is why coordination with other institutions like the Ministry of Health is also necessary, as well as traders. Also, whether or not the proper infrastructure to facilitate farmers to sell their produce should be there. A lot of effort must be put into researching locally produced quality planting seeds so that we have very nutritious certified locally produced food products instead of importing them when we have the land, farmers, and things like rub and minagri. So all that can be done.
Figures from the Ministry of Agriculture and Animal Resources indicate that more than 80% of the population here in Rwanda is self-sufficient when it comes to food. Ideas and input from such meetings will be presented at the UN in September, where the heads of state and government from around the world will be meeting to discuss eradicating global hunger.
On Friday, the University of Kigali met with the 20 participants of Miss Rwanda 2021. This is in regards to the agreement with the organizers of Miss Rwanda to award scholarships to each of the 20 participants. Umwari Jade has more.
For the first time, a scholarship from the University of Kigali was among the prizes awarded to the 20 girls who participated in the final round of the Miss Rwanda 2021 pageant. Some of the girls say that in the gifts they were given, this is the most outstanding. I have already finished my undergraduate, but the university is filled with other programs. I can enroll in their certification or master's program. It is a privilege to be awarded with this, so of course I will come to study. This is the first gift we were given during the competition. We are all aware that going to university is important. It is a place one acquires a greater level of knowledge. Knowledge can also be attained from the outside world, and adding education to it only makes things better. Among all the things we were gifted with, this is the most valuable. It is a privilege to be granted the opportunity to study here. One of the organizers of the Miss Rwanda pageant notes that giving the girls this opportunity is opening more doors in their lives.
We wanted to be able to grant the 20 young women participating in the boot camp of Miss Rwanda with an opportunity to further their studies. Gifting a young woman with the opportunity to study is what has given us great joy.
The Vice-Chancellor of the University of Kigali says that although all 20 girls have been awarded scholarships, they will have to meet the qualifications for students attending and possess the values of the university.
For one to study at the university, they have to be smart. You have to have passed 2 of the subjects you studied in high school. If one does not meet the qualifications, they may be requested to bring in their report cards. Once you are admitted to the school, you need to follow particular guidelines. For example, decent clothing for the young women. Secondly, they are required to follow our school principles. If not, they cannot be part of our school's community.
The University of Kigali was founded in 2013. There are currently more than 5,000 graduates in the labor market that have graduated from the university. Umngari Jade, RTV News.
Many thanks, Umwadi Jed, for that report. Now, the Japan International Cooperation Agency has provided the Rwanda Revenue Authority with the tools to monitor trade activities on the borders of Rwanda with the countries of the region. This includes a Kivu cargo control ship, 2 vehicles, an X-ray baggage scanner, and other COVID-19 safety equipment, including hand sanitizers and face masks. They are all valued at $760,000 US. The Commissioner General of the Rwanda Revenue Authority, Bizimana Rujaninhwari Pasco acknowledged that taxation is one of the major components of the country's economy and that this equipment will strengthen the management and monitoring of smuggled goods on the Rwandan border and across other borders.
The objective is to increase Rwanda Revenue Authority's capacity to fulfill its responsibilities when it comes to tax collection for the sake of nation building. These vehicles will be useful when it comes to patrols near water bodies, when goods are seized on vessels and smugglers get to land and try to flee. Smuggling has always existed, as you know, but sometimes cross-border smugglers sometimes use land routes, not over water. Regardless, Lake Kivu is vast and smugglers do use it. So getting this ship will help us deal with it. We may not stop smuggling altogether, but now we have greater capacity to fight it.
My apologies for the mispronunciation of the Commissioner General's name. It's Bizimana Ruganinhwari. Now, the Japanese ambassador to Rwanda also says that they plan to provide the equipment to Rwanda in order to strengthen Rwanda's traditional partnership with Japan at various levels, and that this partnership with the Rwandan government will continue to develop.
Rwanda is the center of the Great Lakes region. Japanese government, we consider Rwanda as a key country in the region. And for Rwanda, continuity in safety manner of trading is very important. So that's why we are continuing support to RRA for the border facilities.
That's all we had for you tonight. Thank you for the privilege of your time. Continue to stay safe. God bless you and keep you. Have a wonderful weekend. And until next time, I'm Gloria Mutesi. Bye for now.